Good morning, all of you. Welcome to sixth day of this week-long science leadership workshop sponsored by all three academies and organized by Central University of Punjab. We are left with only 6 more talks, and today we are going to start with Professor L.S. Shashidhara right now at 12:15, and after that, 3:30 p.m. today, post-lunch session is going to be by Professor Alok Dhawan. And finally, the final session of the day is at 5:30 by Professor Mona Khori Kasabri from Israel. So let us start with Professor L.S. Shashidhara with an introduction about him. Professor L.S. Shashidhara is Professor of Biology at IISER Pune as well as in Ashoka University. Right now, he is based at Ashoka University on loan from the IISER Pune. He holds PhD from University of Cambridge, UK, and he's also a recipient of the prestigious J.C. Bose National Fellow of the Department of Science and Technology, and is an elected fellow of all the 3 science academies for sponsoring our workshop, INSA, IAS, and NASI. He is winner of the prestigious Shanti Swarup Bhatnagar Prize in 2008. He is elected as associate member of the European Molecular Biology Organization, that is EMBO, very prestigious organization, in 2018. And he is only 3rd scientist from India to become the associate member of the EMBO. He is elected as the president of the International Union of Biological Sciences, IUBS, in 2019. He is also steering an international project on the climate change education titled DROP ICSU. And of course, his merits, the award list of awards and achievements are really exhaustive. And thank you so much, sir, to accept our invitation. We are really privileged to have you here with us. And this session is co-moderated by Dr. Yogalakshmi Nandabalan. Over to you, ma'am, first. Please unmute yourself.
Sorry. Thank you, Dr. Felix. Thank you. Welcome, sir. I welcome the participants also for the first session of the 6th day of the program. The CV itself, we don't have to say anything about the speaker. The CV talks more about him. Without any further delay, let's listen to sir's enlightening speech. Thank you, sir. Over to you.
Thank you, Felix, and also to Yogalakshmi for giving me an opportunity to speak to all of you. I heard the audience is very diverse. There are students, PhD, both undergraduate, postgraduate, and PhD student, as well as young faculty. So in this wide spectrum, talking about leadership, it's somewhat difficult. I'll try my level best. It so happened that each one have their own understanding of what is leadership, and each sector, each domain, each discipline may have a different understanding of what leadership means. So I'll sort of touch upon some of the very basic concepts of so-called leadership, and then I'll talk about academic mentorship, because my topic today I've chosen more about mentoring. Obviously, when we talk to the senior people, we tell them how to mentor young people, and we want to talk to young people about mentoring. And the question comes, whom we are mentoring, right? Of course, young faculty may be mentoring undergraduate students or postgraduate or PhD students. What about young students themselves? Are they mentoring someone? So I thought I'll bring that component too. And also whom you want to look up as mentors. For example, MSc students or undergraduate students or a PhD student, if they want some advice, some inputs, suggestions, whom are you going to? The otherwise basically you call them as mentors, right? Mentors is not someone, your, let's say, PhD research supervisor who will tell you which experiment to do or how to interpret the data, or someone in the class who is going to tell you, very different principles of science or some of the facts related to the science or nature and kind of stuff, right? Mentor is someone beyond all of these things. So in that context, first we want to know why in a society like ours, we need mentors or we need certain so-called leadership skills. Then the question comes, really, what is leadership means, leadership skills means, right? Now, leadership is not, because conventional understanding of meaning of leadership, what many of you may be thinking is leadership means leading people, right? Or leading a project, or leading, a whole nation. Like someone is a prime minister, is a leader of the nation. And on what basis such a person is considered as leader? Is that simply because that person is going to sort of have so many followers, and wherever that person goes, the followers follow? And when I say figuratively, not necessarily literally, whenever the person moves, people follow. Maybe on Twitter, people follow these days, right? You have a leader and you have a Twitter account, and that person tweets, and everybody wants to retweet, and they're what call as following the leader. Now, is that what leadership is all about? It's actually not true. Leadership is not about that one. Leadership is about actually leading your life on your terms, right? It's not about helping others to lead their life as a leader so that you have subordinates and you help them to lead their life. It's not that. Leadership is about leading your life on your terms, right? An undergraduate a student wanting to become an entrepreneur, or wanting to become a scientist, wanting to become a teacher of our particular topic, or wanting to become a biodiversity expert and want to go to the field and look at the trees and animals and birds. That's where that person decides, and then that person will work to meet that ambition. And of course, you need help from other people, right? But you cannot overestimate the contribution by others. You have to actually realize the contribution by yourself. And that's precisely what leadership is all about, right? So you cannot say that, I became so-and-so because of X and Y, right? But that's not the leadership or, contribution of yourself. You have to say, I became this because I had this ambition. I took certain decisions in my life. I did these things. But of course, I did get help from others. You have to acknowledge help from others. It's not that you should not. But you have to first realize that you are leading your life on your terms. And then only you would think you will become what is called leader for yourself. And leadership qualities that we always talk about is, again, not about leading a group of followers. That kind of a leadership is actually false leadership. It's for for building a profession in politics, or building a profession in let's say in business, that you want to be a leader so that other people will listen to you and they will work for you. But that's not what we want, right? Every individual is an independent entity, right? So why do you think that person should listen to me only, right? And in a true democratic sense, you don't want anybody to listen to you. You don't want you to listen to others. I don't want to listen to others. If I realize that what other person is saying correct, makes sense, of course I appreciate, I do say yes, I do do exactly something what other person has done. Because in life, we cannot do trial and error and try to learn everything ourselves. Obviously, we have to learn from someone else's experience. That's how humanity is all about. Compared to all other animals who have small brain to large brain, none of them have the ability, the way we learn from others, right? That's how the humanity is all about. The cultural evolution that we are witnessing for the last 30,000-40,000 years in human species is because it's easier for us, human species, to learn from another person's experience, not necessarily that I had to experience everything. Because in life, if I had to innovate myself, if I had to learn everything myself, I can only, improve myself to some extent. If there are billions of people who have already tried billions of different ways of doing something, let's say cooking rice, or building, like a pyramid 5,000 years ago, Egyptian built pyramids, and the people who built Eiffel Tower 100 years ago, or the tallest building right now in Dubai, the people who built that, they all have gained that in the knowledge and experience of all the people who ever built some buildings, taller buildings, right from the pyramid days or even earlier. Pyramid people also must have learned from someone else, right? How to build a tall building. So obviously we all learn from someone else's experience, someone else's innovation, someone else's thought processes, but doesn't mean that we should succumb to, someone else's orders, so-called orders. And that's not going to be, fruitful or useful or beneficial to any society. In every society, we have to realize that we have to live on our terms, but there are certain social norms, societal rules and regulations we have to follow. Because just because, I have a certain way of living things, I don't want to listen to traffic rules, I don't want to wear masks during pandemic, I don't want to maintain physical distancing during pandemic. That's not leadership is all about. Leadership are all about is ensuring that you live a life of yourself, on your own terms, without harming your neighbors, right? So there are now a boundary conditions added. So as you can see here, more you think of the freedom for yourself, you start seeing a boundary conditions. That's precisely the human society is all about, right? There is nothing that you have lost the freedom. You have your independent identity. You have your own set of rights. But at the same time, we living in a set of way of living requires a societal presence. And societal infrastructure, the structure of the society, can't be dismantled overnight and say that, that's not good for me, I don't want to live that way, right? Because then you will not be able to live on your terms without the help of others or society. So you have to have certain boundary condition that you will not cross this boundary condition, even if it not going to be useful or not going to be, beneficial for you, or it will restrict your growth. Of course, all of us, have to live in terms of the society. So it will restrict our growth. Overnight, I can't become a billionaire. Overnight, I can't become something what I wanted to, is simply because there are so many rules and regulations that we have to follow. But otherwise, the society cannot perform well, right? At the same time, you also have to think that if there are issues in the society which are completely obsolete because of the old thinking or some superstitions or lack of better understanding of the science behind the nature or whatever it is, right? There may be certain norms and, of the society which will hinder not only your growth on your terms and everyone's growth on their terms. That's where you can take certain initiative more for yourself, at the same time for others too. That precisely most of the movements are. If you look at all the, the liberation movement that we have seen in the society, because society, I'll come to that in a minute, why society can be so complex, particularly in modern days, right? It has been always complex since we know what a society is, since we know, the recorded history of the society. So what happens? Let's take one example, like human rights, right? Now, recently, in the last 10, 15 years, right, human rights has been, being sort of projected as an absolute value system for any society. That should be the absolute value system in society. But still, there are many, many things which are not conferred to individuals, and every country, every nation, every society is fighting for it, right? The rights of, when you say rights, it doesn't mean that, someone has, more rights and someone has less right. That's precisely what we're talking about. In human rights, the basic principles of human rights, everybody is equal. There is no one superior, another person is inferior. Irrespective of the color of the skin, the gender of the person, irrespective of their social orientation, irrespective of their geographical location, everybody should be equal. If everybody is equal, then the human rights, that means everybody has the same rights. You can't say, so many people have these kind of rights and these people have the other rights. And once that kind of a society is built, automatically everybody will have leadership skills. Everybody will live on their own terms because everybody has a set of rights, because the societal structure, norms, recognizes everybody's potential, irrespective of what challenges, like physical challenges a person may have. It could be visual challenge, it could be, the problem of legs or hands or hearing, doesn't matter what physical challenge one may be suffering, what kind of other diseases maybe one may be suffering, or what kind of background someone may have come from, socioeconomic background. But as we move along in a better and healthy society, if we have an opportunity to do what you want to do, right? Obviously, there will be some limitations, some because you cannot reach out to everywhere and the way you want to. But that's precisely what a healthy society should be. And we need to build that kind of a society, but better understanding of leadership, rather than saying that, I want to become a leader and I have to have 10 followers with me and they will listen to me, whatever I say, because I have thought of this, I'm very innovative, this is my idea, and everybody should follow this idea, right? This is where we err and we make more mistakes. Every time a leader emerges of this type, the society is actually be detrimental. It will be detrimental to the society, right? We unnecessarily give too much importance to a leader, and the leader takes up too much importance for herself or himself, and invariably it is detrimental to the society, right? So a leader or a mentor should be more like a catalyst, right? Now that person should help you to achieve what you want to achieve, rather than trying to tell no, become a doctor, become an eye specialist, because that's where you can do a good job. Or if I say as a biologist, as a scientist, say no, you should become a biologist, you should work on Drosophila, you should be a geneticist, and then again say do this way, and then you will become a great geneticist, a great biologist. That person may or may not be interested, and that person will walk away because that I'm not interested, and you're not a good mentor. A good mentor is I'm finding out what is that person's interest, what are the person's potential, and then trying to help based on my experience of going through the life. If I'm certain age, reached certain stage in my career, I must have experienced lots of good things and a few bad things too. So what are the things I have experienced which help me to move forward if I'm happy, or if I'm not so happy, which are the ones which are the roadblocks or hindrances I faced? If I share my experience and extrapolate my experience to your path that you want to take. Now, I took a path of being an academic biologist, research and teaching and doing research in some aspects of biology. But you want to do something else. But my experience may be useful for you. You can extrapolate to your career. You may want to become a physicist. You may want to become, an entrepreneur. You may want to become a naturalist, a biodiversity specialist, right? Whatever you want to become, if my experience can be extrapolated to you so that you take the good points and leave out the bad points. And if I can explain to you well, and I can listen to you well, because that's very important. I should listen to you well, then only I'll become a good mentor, right? Now, before I will go to the interactive session, I'll just make a few more points about why we need a mentor. Do you really need a mentor? Because everybody can ask the question, why can't I take decision by myself? I'll read. But reading is also, looking for a mentor, because your mentor may not be known to you, but you know your mentor because you are reading that mentor's book, right? And so reading someone else's book, for example, it could be someone who is not even exist today. For example, if I read more of Gandhiji's book and try to learn from his experiments, his experience, I deliberately use the word experiments because his autobiography is termed My Experiments with Truth, my very, very favorite book. Now, if you want to learn from someone else's experience, someone else's life, and through reading, then only you have a mentor. A mentor doesn't have to be a physically present someone in your own organization, someone whom you can talk to, or physically and kind of stuff, right? So then the question comes, why do we really need a mentor? So as a biologist, I sort of will explain it to you from the evolutionary perspective, right? So human species evolved as a divergent species from an ancestral great ape, and one branch, our first cousin, chimpanzees, another branch is we, the modern humans. But modern humans are not so recent, so very recent, but not so old. Although the divergence between chimpanzees and the modern human happened about 5 million years ago, 50 lakh years. In one branch where we are, there are multiple human species evolved and also became extinct. But what survived is we, the Homo sapiens. And we also lived along with other Homo species for some time. As recently as 30,000-40,000 years ago, there are more than 3 human species on Earth. They also interacted with each other. So we do have the genome elements of other human species in our body. It's simply where there was interbreeding between, let's say, Homo sapiens and Neanderthals, Homo sapiens and Denisovans and kind of stuff, right? Now, the next part, what happened in human evolution compared to all other animal evolution is our ability to share our experience with the help of the syntactic language that we have. Although we still do not know the biology of the human language evolution as much as general, the language evolution, sound, communication, and how insects or animals, other animals communicate with each other, birds communicate with each other. Our ability to communicate with other human beings is much more, complex and much more elaborate compared to, any two animals, talking to each other. For example, we can do argumentation, right? I can do reasoning, right? Vocally, verbally, with the help of sound, I can communicate to you all the thinking that's going on in my brain, why I did this today or why I did particular thing, that particular thing, and what is the advantage that. Now, this is because of the language evolution. What language evolution has gave rise to is what is called cultural evolution. But what is in the culture? It's in the air, right? You cannot call it that there is something in the culture which I can physically touch in my body. And every child, when she or he is born, that particular child will start as a human being which is not different than a human being before the cultural evolution. The cultural evolution of the current kind that we see is only about 20,000 years old, right? Now, but although there were some elements of cultural aspect even earlier than 20,000 years ago, but most of what we see is the last 20,000 years. It's simply because that's when more and more people started living together and more communication happened. Earlier days, people were living in smaller group and most of them are genetically linked. Basically, they are related to each other. It's like a group of animals, like monkeys or elephants. When they move around, usually all the members of that group are related to each other. There'll be one or two times an outsider may come and join the group, but typically they're all familiarly linked. That's the kind of groups human also used to live. Only in the recent, when I say recent in the evolutionary, it's very recent, but for you it may be typical, still old, 20,000 years ago, or for the last 20,000 years or so, people started living in larger group. And the group became much larger, only about 10 to 12,000 years onwards. When agriculture started, people settling in a smaller localities because they had a food security. They didn't have to go around looking for food. From hunter-gatherer type of lifestyle, we became more of a sedentary lifestyle because we started agriculture, we produce our own food, right? So in that context, we started looking at people whom otherwise would not have met, right? So for example, as a child, I am born to a family and that family is always together for the next 20 years, 30 years or 35 years, whatever the life expectancy in those days, 35 to 40 years, let's say. It was much shorter than 35 to 40 years. There's no clear evidence of what was the life expectancy 10,000 years ago. Whatever it is, a child would not have seen too many strangers. unless two tribal groups somehow come to the border and they start shouting at each other, the way we and Chinese did recently, right? Now, in that context, a child would never have interacted with outsiders. Now, much of your interaction with your own family members, you don't need much language, right? You can actually, have a understanding because of the chemical understanding, because the emotional contacts you have with your parents. The second part is a lot of physical, what called body language, sign language will help. And everybody is doing exactly the same thing at a given time. So everybody knows each other, what they are doing. So you don't, again, there's no complexity of what is to be understood by what other people are doing. But only when you started living in larger group, in a village and a smaller township kind of a thing, you start meeting strangers too often, then you need to understand them better. Otherwise, we don't know whether they are trying to help us or trying to cheat us. What they do is, come in our way. And, what it's like a road, right? You all follow road rules. Someone comes from the, those who are going in India, for example, if I'm going, I'm always on the left side. And I see the traffic coming in front of me on my right side so that I know. But if I'm not sure what other people are doing, I may, go and hit someone or someone may hit me. But because there is a clear set of understanding of what each person does, so we more or less follow our, safely, travel distances and come back home alive in one body, right? So think of a child who has to sort of go around and meet strangers after about 5 years of life. And first 5 years, the child is in that with family, most of the time with parents. And when the child has to go, then it has to go around and talk to so many people. There is so much of complexity. Each one is doing different things based on their own understanding and their own innovation has happened. Technology people may do differently. Farmers may do differently. Business people may do something differently. So how to understand this world, right? Because that understanding of world is not comes directly through the biological, the way we inherit our, the physical features. The cultural features you have to learn every time a child is born, right? Automatically, the child is not born with millions of, books, whatever the information available, born into, the brain of the child. So that's where the mentorship is required, because the child should know. The child means all of us are basically child as far as learning is concerned until we die. So in every stage of our life, we need to learn from others what may go wrong if I do this, or what would be the implication of me doing something to myself and to my neighbors, right? Unless we follow these thinking pattern, right, we will not be productive. When you call productive, again, you have to say that you are living your life on your terms without harming others. It's not about making big money. It's not about producing lots of papers. It's not getting a Nobel Prize. Right? Eventually, all that may happen, in the society when large number of people are there. Some percentage of people will have all those things. Right? We don't know who can get, because it's very difficult to plan those kind of things and get that. So in that context, it's very important that we learn from others. And when we learn from others, the people who tell us also should know that why they are telling. They're telling so that I may extrapolate their experience, their understanding, their innovation to my life, see whether it is suitable or not. When I do this and then take a decision, then I've achieved the role of a leader, right? That's precisely my take on the leadership and academic mentorship and all. Last part, when it comes to academic mentorship per se, which I'm sure it's the same thing, whether in the life or in the academic, the person who is going to sort of identify what you are interested in, what is your potential. Your potential is maybe more in computation, or maybe more in experimental, hands-on experimental. You have certain kinds of skills to do experiments, right? Or more maybe in theory. You may be more in an abstract thinker. right? An abstract thinker are also important. Like, what Einstein, a 25-year-old boy, if he could, sort of come out with special theory of relativity and later, general theory of relativity, right? I mean, a lot of things is also because he had a lot of abstract understanding of the very different aspect of the natural forces, and then finally he put together in a very nice way, right? So some people may do it without, direct mentorship. Some people, they have, indirect mentorship. Einstein did have mentorship. He has written in his many, writings that who are the people who mentored him and kind of stuff. When it comes to the actual doing science, one is, of course, is science as a profession or academics as a profession, how you get mentors. Then finally, the subject specific. You also understand that nothing that we do, right, is 100% belongs to us, right? All of us that we are doing is adding a small incremental knowledge. The person may be Nobel laureate. It's still an incremental knowledge, the pool of knowledge that's added. It's a foolishness to think that I had to do a breakthrough research and in the process actually don't get anywhere, right? You cannot come out of a pool of knowledge and say I will do a breakthrough research and generate a new knowledge. Knowledge, it's a lot of expands. It's like a a whole universe expanding. You can't go out of the universe and say I'll create something. But to create something, you need something. That something is part of the universe. Similarly, the knowledge, you have to be within the knowledge domain to create some more new knowledge or something new. When we say breakthrough, it's still relative. How much more you have added, how much new thinking it has come out, right? And so thinking too much philosophically, saying that I have to, do all of these things separately out of my society and everything is not going to help. You have to live with society as a true societal person. When I say society, it could be an academic society in the context of today. And I'll end with saying that precisely what Newton, mentioned, what Newton said, that if I could see farther because I was standing on the shoulders of giants, those giants are his mentors. It could be 100-year-old, or 200-year-old scientist. I mean, not old. I mean, the people who lived 100, 200 years before his time. It could be Galileo, Copernicus, and all those people. They are the ones who, provided so much of input to the understanding of physics, understanding of the planetary motions, and then he put together into a, something more, and then, pushed the knowledge to the frontiers a little bit more, and that's what he gives credit to all the people who, created that knowledge, right? So I'll stop here and let's have some interactive session. Thank you.
Thank you so much, sir. It was actually enlightening. You rightly pointed out what is a false leadership, how a leadership should be, and a leader or a mentor should be always a catalyst. And if you have a healthy society, then everybody would have or possess the leadership skills, and the society will excel. Thank you so much, sir. Your words were actually enlightening. I'm sure the participants also would have enjoyed the session and understood what actually leadership is. With this, we'll take on some questions. Yeah, the first question is from Keshav Goel. What are the hard skills and soft skills required for a scientist?
Okay. So the soft skills and hard skills, it's not the same as software versus hardware, right? In computers, we use software versus hardware. What you can see physically, it's called hardware. What you use there, you don't see physically, it's written abstract way. It's called software, right? But software drives the hardware, and hardware without a software is completely useless, and the software without the hardware is also completely useless. Now, hard skills and soft skills are, can be different in different contexts, right? Your ability to theorize, your ability to formulate an hypothesis, your ability to design an experiment, right? All can be considered as soft skills compared to your ability to conduct meticulously an experiment in an unbiased way, right? You make sure that your controls are correct. Make sure that without a negative control being negative, a positive control being positive, right? And not even looking at the results is your, as a good experimentalist. For that to happen, you need to be very confident that you are doing everything properly, that you are dealing with the experiment. And even if you are confident, if something goes wrong, you should blame yourself and say, no, maybe I didn't pipette it very well. As a biologist or a chemist, we all use what's known as pipette. And maybe I added 1 microliter more of the reagent than what one should have added. Maybe it went wrong, or 1 microliter less, maybe it went wrong. So these are all the sort of, the hard skills that you need to learn, both handling the equipment, understanding the way the equipment functions, understanding how your, the hand one, all of these things should know and consistently should work, and that basically helps. But again, it varies. For example, if you're a theoretical physicist, then what are hard skill and soft skills here, right? So the soft skill is your abstract thinking. More or less for everybody, soft skill is your abstract thinking, your ability to formulate an hypothesis. But hard skill for a theoretical physicist, your mathematics, your mathematical methods, how good you are in mathematical methods to convey what you were thought about. Because as a theoretical physicist, generally you convey everything using mathematics. So you should have those mathematical skills to convey what you're thinking. Otherwise, what you're thinking is, it'll be in your brain, it will die in your brain, and then finally no one will understand. How do you know you have been innovative thinker, right? So that's why you need both. Finally, communication skills is one thing, whether a mathematical way of communication or verbal or verbose or sentence-based communication. That skill, that's one of those hard skills, should be there in all of us. Otherwise, it's completely useless what we do.
Okay, so it's a brilliant session, Professor Shashidhara, as expected from you. I've been hearing you for quite some time. Absolutely great. You touched upon so many things. You started your talk from the evolutionary legacy. Then, the leadership is nothing to do with the followers. And so as, neither about the orders and about the societal norms that we should all follow. I mean, a lot of interesting topics that you actually touched upon. Without really wasting much of the time, a lot of interesting questions. I can see that. One question, and let me pick up one question. This is from Tang Q. I'm sorry, apologies. I cannot pronounce your name clearly. It is from Nagaland. Excellent talk, sir. You briefly touched upon evolution. I heard organizational hierarchy in apes. Most traditional or conventional leaders today are dictatorial and masochistic. Do you think this is a primitive trait of humanity, an evolutionary baggage? Yes.
Not really. Not everything is evolutionary baggage, because there are, animal groups which live with much more in harmony without any hierarchy. They have a better social system. And even if there was so-called hierarchy called alpha male or, in a group, or, a female, matriarchal groups, there are certain levels of, democratic understanding and cooperation and sharing. Everything happens. What we have practiced, actually we are practicing, unfortunately, not what you are just experiencing, is actually something which has evolved in human because of our cultural evolution. And when you say evolved, it's not biological evolution. It's something emerged. More often what we hear today is a deliberate attempt, right, to become a leader and to become, a dictatorial way at the cost of even lives. If you cannot, if you can't even, I understand, if you want to be someone who should have a little bit more food in a group, or you should be the first one to reach the place where there is a food. That's one aspect of leadership, which is somewhat more there in other animals too, but not necessarily in every case. For example, a leader many times is the one which goes front, kills the prey, and then first allows the members of the group to eat, and then it will eat the remaining one. The other members will eat less, but they will make sure that there is something is left for the leader. Then leader is taking a risk here. Leader is going and the hide in the group and the herd and trying to kill the prey. But we know that around that time, the leader may also get into some danger, or prey may run so fast, then leader has to run so fast behind. The leader is going to get into a physical problem. The muscles may degenerate, it may get into a fall, which may break bones and kind of stuff. That kind of leadership is different than what we are experiencing today. In today's experience, we push someone else's life for us, right? Someone, I take a decision, it may lead to war, but I don't want to get into the war. I push my followers, go and fight the war, and this is good for your life. Tomorrow you will go to heaven if you get killed in the war, right? This whole is very corrupt way of looking at the leadership. So it's definitely not biological; it's more cultural.
So our next speaker, Professor Dhawan, is also on the panel. So in case you want to ask some question or comments, you're welcome, sir.
Hi, hello.
So, yeah, over to Dr. Yogalakshmi for the next question.
Hi. Shashi, I really enjoyed your talk. Fantastic. I think the way you have put leadership into perspective, I think it's phenomenal, and how we've grown up. I think I'll be talking later after lunch, perhaps. But I think leadership, if you just break it down into its parts, I think if you look at the word per se, leadership could be the ship that leads the pack, as you rightly mentioned, selflessly trying to create a path for the others to follow, not necessarily follow, but at least clear the path so that others can move at a much rapid pace. I think brilliantly put by you in your lecture, and congratulations.
Thanks a lot.
Yeah.
Yes. Next question is from Dr. Abdul Hamid. He's asking, is there any role of instinct or hereditary impact on leadership quality, or is it just sharpening by the circumstances, or it's a blend of two? Can you?
The first part, the second part I understood. If the circumstances, what the first part?
So he's asking whether it is a role of any instinct.
Instinct.
Yeah.
No. So instinct is a word that we use in a very loose way. See, the brain is pretty rational, right? We all have evolved, biologically we evolved to have a brain, and what brain does is to receive information using all the sensory organs, process the information, and takes a decision to what to do or what not to do, right? And this is rationality of this brain is there in all animals, including early insects all the way up to us. And people have experimentally shown how rational decision every one of the decision is. Otherwise, you would not have seen this many species continuously living for a very long time and facing lots of circumstances. Like there is a locust swarm right now. It's a small insect. If it is not rational in its decision making processes, right, and then you would have become extinct by now. Particularly desert locusts, which they live in a very low abundant for food, right? And that's how they go on a migration. Coming to human, we have an additional element in our evolution is what is known as consciousness, being aware of what we do, right? Many times, even as recently last week, there are some fantastic experiments people have done that many things that we do, even in so-called cultural domain, is actually we are not aware that we are doing it, right? We as Ramchandran and all have done fantastic experimental aspect to it. But when we can reason why we took a decision, right? Then we say, I have taken rational decision. And when we can't, because our brain processes sometimes many information, it doesn't come to the conscious part of the brain, but it cannot reason out why, that decision I took. We call it as an instinct. It's just because I can't give an explanation. But brain will follow certain rational way of processing information, pros and cons of everything that has come to your brain based on your current sensory perception and also previous memory, that's there in the brain. And that's what we call as instinct, right? Finally, every decision has to be done with rationality. So even if some time an instinct comes to us because simply thinking that we don't know how the brain took decision, we need to verify whether my decision is going to give the results that I want. Like I would do in particularly it's easier for academic people. That's how we do all our academic work, right? I want to design an experiment. I do frame an hypothesis. I also look at what if my hypothesis is wrong? What if my results will come out differently? And I will have plan A, plan B, plan C, alternate hypothesis, alternate way of. Similarly, in life too, when you take decision, you can always experiment theoretically or imaginatively. You can put it in very different contexts and see what if next year things will go wrong. What if the economy falls down? What if all the colleges are closed because of pandemic? What would I do? So at every step, you can take appropriate decisions by what you call forecasting. That's something what human can do, most other animals can't do. But only there is still a lot of unexpectedness will happen. That's okay. I mean, see, when we say when live on our terms, when living on our terms means we are not dictated by other human beings. But if we are dictated by nature, for example, an earthquake, something happens, what can we do about it? But still you are living on your terms. It doesn't mean that you have to live on your terms and you control the whole earth, the whole universe kind of thing, right? You have to be part of the system. The system is somewhat dynamic. Lots of changes will happen. Many things are not in your control. Economy may get shattered. You know, whatever happens. But it's okay. Even getting it, for example, young students who are here may be thinking of getting admission to PhD in, let's say, in a top-notch place. Irrespective of how well you do, if someone does even better, that person may get admission. You didn't get admission. But I don't think one should consider that, I didn't do well. Many times, as long as you have taken the right decisions, you have, had a, working on your terms, and I keep saying, if you didn't get an admission to Harvard, MIT, Cambridge, or NCBS or IIC Bangalore, it's okay. I mean, but because there are billions of people and everybody is looking for the similar kind of opportunity, and then someone will go, someone will not go. But that's not the end of our life. That's where again our leadership quality should come, saying that it's okay. I didn't get to MIT, I go to somewhere else, but still I leave my terms.
Okay, here is the next question from Sarup Vishwas from Dikha in West Bengal. I have heard that traveling is the best cure of racism. To have an inclusive worldview, exposure to different cultures might be essential because that fosters intercultural communication. Do you agree?
Yes, very much. In fact, we learn so much. In fact, see, one of the good thing about academic life is our academic input, what knowledge that we gain, comes from so many different. Of course, you have to be very objective, learn from everybody, not just only from today's literature, also earlier literature and everything. Then you realize that the Greek have contributed, like so take the science, right? Maybe some aspect has come from China, India, then Saudi Arabian countries, Middle East, then Greece, and then went into Europe, and then they added everything. But what we today you see is on the foundations of every cultural practices. Before all of these things, the use of fire, use of clothes, right? Cooking methods, making tools, stone tools or variety of different types of tools was there in, much before we even came out of Africa. It's already there, In fact, if you look at the evolutionary, some kind of a complexity in terms of cultural complexity, post-human biological evolution, 80 to 90% of cultural complexity has already evolved in African settlement before even came out of Africa to other places, right? So we have learned from every, culture, every, populations. And again, the race is the biological word, and we are unnecessarily using this. The race is again, something which is biologically, we use this for animals and plants and microbes are different races when they are not intermixing so easily. We are not evolved to become races. That the fertility of people marrying from very two distinct geographical locations, or their children, their fertility levels is so the same irrespective of whether two English people marry, or two Japanese, or one African, one Japanese, or one American and one African. It's the same. So there's nothing like race now in the human society.
Next question is from Rishabh Nag. Do you feel the societal norms in India has a lot to do with one's shaping of ambition? The challenges are many. How to overcome that?
Repeat the question, please.
Yes, sir. Do you feel the societal norms in India has a lot to do with one's shaping of ambition? The challenges are many. How to overcome that?
Okay, so it's true. I mean, for whatever the cultural reasons or political reasons, over a couple of millennia, we have put too many terms and conditions in our society. When I say there are certain terms and conditions everybody has to follow, otherwise you cannot live in a society because you have to cooperate. There is always someone has to work in a team, give and take kind of a situation, right? You cannot do everything yourself, and you share the labor and you share the product of the labor, right? That's precisely what a society is all about. Otherwise, you cannot have to call it as a society. I know I can be just on my own individually and live separately, but I can only live to some extent. I cannot live, beyond my own personal expectations. As a society, I can live even beyond my personal expectations. People should realize that living in a society means you are already gained a lot. Every day is a challenge to survive. Person who is living in a society will live for 15 years, 20 years, 30 years, 40 years, right? Still has food, 2 meals a day. That means you are already gained a lot being in a society. So when you say, break the societal barriers, it's only something which is incorrect based on today's understanding of the world. We cannot blame 1,000 years ago whoever framed those rules today. We have to blame ourselves that we have a better understanding of the society now, better understanding of human rights, human life, human physiology, human languages. And if you are following the same traditions, which is set by 1,000 years ago, by the people who thought that's what the society should be, and we are the foolish, they are not the foolish. The people who created the caste system are not, we cannot blame them. We have to blame ourselves because we are still practicing the caste system. Because we have a better understanding of life, better understanding of the nature, better understanding of the universe. And if we are still following the same old caste system, and we are the most foolish people, not the people who thought of it 1,000 or 2,000 or 3,000 years ago, because their understanding of the world and universe and human species was so different. And why we should blame them? We should blame ourselves because we are practicing.
Okay, I will pick this question from Asiya Siddiqui from Delhi. Book as a mentor is an amazing concept. Gandhi is the story of my experiments with truth is a book I always wanted to read. I will soon read it. Could you please share some of your other all-time favorite books, perhaps some books with good mentorship messages?
Okay, so it's very interesting. I have not read so many autobiographies to call that, I use the books. For example, what I meant by mentorship is, for example, if I read, right, process of discovery, right, by someone has written, right? For example, let's say history and philosophy of science. There are so many books on that one. Or if I read a novel, right, it doesn't have to be, a biographical book, right? If I read a novel, right, let's say, someone like Dostoevsky or someone like Premchand in India or Rabindranath Tagore or, there are many, many good, writers in every language, in every society and in India too. And if I read and if I, learn from them, gain from them something I appreciate, and then something I get a feel that, oh, this is what I should do, right? That means that author is already my mentor, right? So, yes, I mean, if I had to list my favorite books, that becomes my personal opinion. I mentioned Gandhiji's experiment, my experiment with truth, as part of my talk, but definitely it's still my most favorite book. Even Gandhiji's another book, Hind Swaraj, he wrote when he was still in his early 50s or just about when he was 50-year-old, and he had not seen India as much he saw later, but he wrote so much about his concept of what his freedom means. And he was not talking about freedom from British. It was from freedom from ourselves, freedom from our own societal conflicts, which are accumulated over time because of ignorance and and sometimes deliberate dictatorship. So I guess such kind of books is one. As if you are talking about novels, of course, Premchand and many, many Kannada writers in my language. My mother language is Kannada, and there are fantastic writers, and I love reading all of those books.
Next question is from Ganesh Krishnan. What is the role of social media to shape leaders instead of misguiding the current generation?
Okay, so it's interesting, it's a time, how we all have experienced, explosion of information and cultural, diversity. So when initially people were, as I told you, living in smaller group, much of what the other people thinking or doing, you can actually understand simply by looking at them, not necessarily even to listen to their talks. But slowly they had to explain to us why they did something, because the rationale was not very obvious, and they had to explain. That's where the language became important. But when the script was invented, people could write something and transfer the information to another geographical location without physically going there, right? So you can learn from someone else's innovation, thinking, rationality by just reading something. Then it also not just longitudinally going to somewhere else, vertically also. For example, someone wrote a script 5,000 years ago in Egyptian hieroglyphics. Now I can read it. Even after 5,000 years later, I'm learning from someone else's thinking. This is the way information was processed, and this one. The good thing about that time was information was coming slowly and we were assimilating slowly. There was enough time for us to look at and cross-check every bit of information, because there will be always conflicting information. What comes from the west, what comes from the east, what comes from the south or north, maybe somewhat different, and we need to compare different pieces of information, assimilate, and make ourselves some judgmental thing that, okay, this is what I want to do. If I had to hunt a whale, or if I had to hunt a hedgehog, or if I have to go and grow lots of mangoes in my orchard, right? But when the internet and other things started, it started exploding so much that information overload. There was hardly any time to think. Then what you do is you get an impression. Okay, this is an interesting thing. You simply, consider that interesting and then forget after some time. But the problem with the social media is not only what your impression about it, you simply forward it, right? Now, many times, that, right? A very well framed lie or fake information is also very attractive, because the person who wrote it, that person knows it's fake. Obviously, the person wants other people to believe that it is true. The person will actually put more effort to convert a fake into true news, right? For example, if I'm saying something true, this is what I experienced, this is what I thought, right? I simply write in 2-3 sentences. I try to explain, but I may not try to make it more colorful. That's why science is less colorful, right? Many people say science is bland. Your communication is very bland. It's true, because many times, how will I do? DNA is a double helical structure, right? And this is what it is, and it has, there's so many turns, and this many angstroms, and there are ATGC, base pairs and everything. We go on explaining it. It may look bland, because that's what we are trying to explain. But if I'm trying to explain something with it is because the person who writes the false things knows it's false. In respect, who else is talking about it? That person makes it as decorative as acceptable by the reader, and they forward it. And then if I'm not rational enough, if I don't look at properly what that person is saying, I just keep forwarding it, then it becomes a viral. That's why fake news become more viral than the real news. So this is something we have to understand, that social media cannot be your mentor. So unless you have ability to compare your thought processes with someone else's thought process, because you need to know what is other person thinking, why that person is thinking. That comes when you read elaborately in a novel, in a large, long writing, or in a textbook, compared to a 160 character Twitter message, right? You cannot understand someone else's thought process. Then in the process, what happens is, you cannot get any mentorship from another person in the world, because there's no way to cross check your way of thinking with someone else's way of thinking, and then you cannot make, a new way of thinking, which is more realistic.
So yes, so reading without forwarding, forwarding without reading, and of course, the deliberate forwarding the fake news. You touched upon really important message, and let me also pick up another question, also associate question again about the fake news in the social media. It's by Shraddha from Mumbai. You briefly mentioned about masks and physical distancing, but none in my community here in Tharavi are wearing masks or maintaining physical distancing. Reason is hundreds of messages we get every day through WhatsApp and Facebook about how masks cause hypercapnia and hypoxia, and how we should not follow physical distancing. Rather, we should mingle more to increase the herd immunity. As someone associated with INSEE COVID, what is your take on these arguments?
Oh dear. So I thought today I'm going to talk about more about learning from each other rather than specific about COVID. This is about the science of COVID, right? The two aspects. I think I'll leave that to another speaker. Right now, it's the last, another 1 minute. I can't explain all about COVID. What I will do is to explain why still people are not following, irrespective of the so much of bombarding is happening that wear mask and maintain physical distancing. Right from March, the automated message comes every time we make phone calls or television, newspaper, everywhere it comes. One is simple. At the same time, it's also equally foolish. The reason simple is we all make a picture of a world based on what I see or what I hear or what I understand, right? That picture of the world is based on my sensory perception. In my sensory perception, I cannot see a virus, right? Same thing, people believe that it is the sun which moves around the earth until Galileo thought about it. Even today, no one has seen it. Even Galileo never saw that it is the, earth which is moving around the sun. He only interpreted using variety of different kinds of observation. He made that his observation will hold good only if it is the earth which is moving around the sun, right? So even with all this technology, we have space technology, no one has ever seen this. But we all now believe is because there is a rational way of, explaining this, and people have, accepted it. Similarly, the viruses, which are basically so microscopic, looking at the bacteria, pathogenic bacteria is still 150 to 200-year-old phenomena. Viruses is less than 100-year-old phenomena in the society. So unless you're a biologist or a scientist, you will not, realize that why, everybody is, I don't see any virus. Why should I wear mask kind of thing? As if, at least in case of pollution, people are more reactive because you could actually see, the air is very thicker. There was no visibility in the air. So, you could actually see that something is there which may be bothering us, so you can wear the mask. But virus, what is there to see? What is there to even indicate? People, particularly uneducated people who cannot understand this, it's very difficult for them to follow. So we have to educate them using good analogies, right? In fact, it so happened that, like the way Galileo predicted, it is the earth which moves around the sun. People predicted there are something like viruses even before, anything was known about the virus physically, right? When Spanish flu time, hardly anything was known about virus, but people were wearing masks. People realized that something infection is going on, which we cannot see. It's not even bacteria they knew, right? So I think it's in all our students and who are listening to this, every educated person who has understood the importance of wearing masks to explain to others why we have to wear masks, right? And we can't blame them if they're not wearing. Yeah, thanks.
There's one question from Rekha. She's asking, what are the cutting edge initiatives one has to take to lead others and be a successful leader?
To lead others?
Yes, sir. To lead others and be a successful leader.
In my life, I don't want to talk about leading others. No one should lead others.
So then I will pick up the one perhaps last question, because we are already, the time is already up. So Mathurima from Salem is asking, who were your mentors in your life and what motivated you to choose a career in developmental biology?
Okay, that's a good question. In fact, I wanted to touch upon this, Felix. You did mention yesterday that I should touch upon. I forgot about it. Again, my first set of mentors, obviously, my parents, is very obvious. My father is the one who never bothered to ask me whether I'm going to become an engineer or a scientist or what I want to do. In fact, even for everybody's life in India, 12th standard is the most important thing. 12th standard examination. And 1 week before my final examination, I was reading novels, not my textbooks. And he never bothered. And he even used to ask me, have you read this? Have you read this? And kind of stuff. And then I chose, whichever the degree program I wanted to go. He only facilitated what I was interested in, rather than trying to say, oh, why don't you go to engineering? There are better jobs there, or instead of going to biology, in the academic domain. That's one aspect. The second is because I read books and I used books as my mentor, the authors of those books as my mentors, one aspect. Third is direct mentors in my academic life. My PhD supervisor, again, while she knew that I cannot think of a set of experiments in a particular area because I'm new to the field. So of course she gave a project. Within this big project, can you do some of these experiments? This is how you should do experiments. This is how you should run this equipment, and this is how one should do X-ray, photography and kind of stuff. But that she also gave me so much freedom to start innovating at every step. I didn't have to ask her, shall I do this experiment or shall I do that experiment? And it was my decision, to whatever the way. And at the same time, whatever I did, she encouraged me, say, okay, go and buy this kind of a thing. And she trusted. And the last thing she also did was when we put together a manuscript, and she realized that this manuscript has more of my contribution than hers. And then she said, okay, you should become a contributing author. My first paper in my academic life, I was, a contributing author rather than simply an author because of the student and not a supervisor. So all of these things will clearly have, gave me that this is how a good mentor should be, right? And subsequently in my life, I always had that kind of people, and always gave me the freedom, they trusted, go and do whatever you want. As recently as when I was sitting in Pune for the first 10 years of my, living here, the very first director, he gave me so much of freedom and trusted. And to an extent that I used to take decision without even consulting him on which has a financial implication to the institute, to the crores of rupees, with the confidence that my rational decision he will accept because that much freedom he has given me, right? So that's the kind of mentor, shaped my life.
Yes, sir. We have one last question. It's from Vedika from Bangalore. She's asking, a general notion in India is that private universities are inferior to public, which is in contrast with that in US. Harvard, Yale, Stanford, etc. are all private. How was your experience in Ashoka? As someone who switched job from a premier institute like ISER, Pune, to an emerging private university like Ashoka, can you share your experience? Were you taking a risk? Would you suggest such a shift in the present scenario?
Okay, so I've spent a lot of time in public policy also. One of the things I'm also very interested in educational landscape in India. So one of the problems of the educational landscape in India is we have a large demographic population which need to be educated at very different levels and also at different numbers of people may be interested in different things, whether it's law or economics or science. But it's coming to science. Right now, the number of people wanting to do high quality science are much more than the number of organizations where your undergraduate teaching is integrated with research, right? So what happens is, because research is expensive and most go into an easy way that I'll only use the textbook, teach and give an examination, and if you pass, you'll get a degree. That are how 99% of our students are going through, undergraduate students, right? But that's not good education. Good education is where the process of knowledge generation is actually taught, and that experience has to come to our students. Otherwise, they're not able to develop the most important skills that they need to develop are self-learning, analytical ability, critical thinking. These are the 3-4 different things. They will not learn unless they participate in doing research, or at least a researcher who has so much of vast experience in doing research. The way they teach will be so different, and that teaching research integration should happen. Now, because the government cannot cater to a larger population of that quality education, it's very important that the private universities and colleges should do it. The reason private university colleges is one is, of course, not many good people are going to private universities, and the second is they're not putting enough money on research. And Ashoka was a refreshing change where they have considered Ashoka as a research university. The quality of teaching and research they want to do should be as good as anywhere in the world. And the kind of infrastructure they're building for research is similar to what you would see, in best places. And when I went there, I went there to participate in that kind of an emerging new type of institute in India. When it becomes successful, more and more people will hopefully, emulate that particular model, because there is nothing wrong in seeing that sustainability is very important. Will you be sustainable for a very long time with so much of expenses incurring, right? So it had to have a so-called business plan. This business plan not to make profit in education, but to provide quality education for a very long time in a sustainable way. That is what I'm trying, along with many other people in Ashoka, and I'm very happy with that.
Thank you so much, sir. Over to Dr. Khalid.
Yeah, thank you so much, sir. It's an absolutely wonderful session. We are really sorry. I think we have already offshoot by, I could see that almost 14 minutes. So thank you, sir. You actually came much earlier. Actually, you spent a lot of time with us, and we are really, really privileged to have you here with us. And it's absolutely amazing session. And because we actually learned a lot of interesting side of your own personal journey and more about mentorship, and definitely a lot of questions. We really don't have any time. And yes, I am asking them to post those questions in the YouTube. So maybe if you get time, you can just go through those, those questions as well. So maybe some interesting questions are there. Thank you, sir. Thank you from the bottom of my heart. And as part of the organizing team, thank you so much for accepting our invitation and joining. Over to Yogalakshmi. Would you like to add some points?
Yeah. Thank you so much, sir. Your talk itself shows how so much of experience, so much of knowledge you have. And thanks for sharing your experiences and knowledge with our audiences. And we are humbled, honored, and privileged to have you today here. And it is actually so nice to listen to you. Thank you so much, sir.
Thank you. Thanks. I also enjoyed talking to all of you. Bye.
Bye.
Thank you. Goodbye. For participants, our next session will start at 3:30 by Professor Alok Dhawan, and it's going to be another exciting session. So please join at exactly 3:30. Okay. So goodbye till then.